we're going to use 3D axial separation for treating primary disc-related disorders, as well as a warm-up when we're going to move to segmental treatments for secondary disc-related disorders. If a patient is uncomfortable in flexion, then we'll elect to use a 3D axial separation and extension. However, some of our cases will not be comfortable in an extended position, and with those cases, we're going to elect to use a technique where they are flexed. Flexion incorporates coupling movements where they side bend and rotate in the same direction. So in this case, if we're treating her left side, we're going to want to open that side up with right side bending, and in accompanying right position, we're going to need to do several things to preposition the patient. We can perform this technique in two different ways, either standing behind or in front of the patient. I'm first going to show it to you standing behind. So, in order to preposition the patient, first, we're going to flex the lumbar spine. In addition, we're going to bring the lower leg into a flexed position, and then the sky side leg, or the upper leg, will be behind the lower leg. Now, in order to give a right rotation accompanying her right side bending, I'm going to ask her to put her right arm behind her, like this. In flexible patients, you may need to go back and reset the flexion, because otherwise they might go into lordosis in that position. Now, what we're going to ultimately do is place our hand over the iliac crest and inspire or induce that side bending that we want by pulling the pelvis down, encouraging a right side bending. However, it's hard to overcome the weight of the patient in this position with me pronating my forearm and pushing down. So instead of trying it from this position, what I'm going to do is unrotate the patient, make sure sacrum is vertical, place my hand on her iliac crest, get the side bending I want, and then let her rotate back. Now she can't rotate as far because she's at her end range. In this position, without bearing a lot of weight on her shoulder, she can even put her arm up here without bearing a lot of weight on her shoulder. I'm going to induce primarily a side bending force on her pelvis. I can hold this for 30 to 40 seconds and then retest her to see if it made a difference in either her painful movement or her dural tests. If this particular treatment plateaus in its effect, then I can add a rotatory type 3D axial separation. I'd first get her to this side bent position, then change my direction on the iliac crest and emphasize rotation. In either case, I can add a high velocity thrust. In the side bending position here, I can get the patient to take in a deep breath, let it out. I raise my head up, emphasize the side bending, and then overpressure. I don't just let go, but I let go gradually to reduce the amount of stress. I can also perform the overpressure in an emphasis of rotation. I'll first emphasize the side bending, then provide the rotation, ask her to take in a deep breath, let it out, and at the end of her breath, I once again give a thrust in the direction of the rotation. I don't let off the rotation just yet. I let it off slowly, maintain the side bending, then let off the side bending without bearing a lot of weight on her shoulder. Afterwards, I'll reposition the patient, retest either the painful movement in the lumbar exam and or the dural tests. For some of us who have smaller hands or less body strength, we may elect to do the 3D axial separation and flexion while standing in front of the patient. The components of prepositioning and treatment are the same. We're just going to be approaching the patient from a different direction. Once again, we're going to utilize treating the side that's up, the sky side. We're going to reach under the patient, flex the patient here, ask her to put her right arm behind her. Once again, you may need to make sure that she's flexed. We're going to put the lower leg in front and the top leg behind. And in this position, now I'm going to stabilize over the lumbar or over the thoracic and upper lumbar spines, She can have her hand up here like she did before. Once again, I'm going to de-rotate her with my hand, the mobilization hand over the iliac crest, oriented in a dorsal and caudal direction to emphasize the side bending. I can now re-rotate her to her end range, and in this position, I can simply emphasize the side bending. You can see that she is side bent to her right and rotated to her right in a flexed position, and as a consequence, coupled. Again, I can hold it for the 30 to 40 seconds, do 5 to 7 repetitions of that 30 to 40 second hold, and then retest or dural tests and or basic functional exam movement tests. If she plateaus in the effect, after I've incorporated the side bending, I can shift my body and now in a direction perpendicular to the one I was doing before for side bending, I can emphasize the rotation. Once again, holding it for 30 to 40 seconds. At the end of the 30 to 40 seconds, without letting go of the side bending, I de-rotate the patient and then simply undo the side bending. In either the side bending or rotation technique, I can add a high velocity thrust. For the side bending technique, I have her here. I can take up the slack, ask her to take in a breath, let it out again, and now at the end, I give thrust. Don't let off the pressure of the side bending, but instead let it off slowly, retest. Or I can side bend, change my direction, take up the slack in rotation, ask her to take in a breath, let it out, and at the end of the range, thrust. Once again, I'm not going to let go of the side bending, just allow her to de-rotate, and then slowly let off the side bending. Once again, take her back to a neutral position, retest.